Hello, friends. Blessings to everyone watching. Thank you so much. I'm Victor Hamsa, and you're watching my channel called The Spiritual Scientist. I just thought I'd get on and do a live stream. Nothing exact to talk about. I had done one the other day, but I erased it because it didn't seem my conjecturing was helping out humanity in a whole, just making people more nervous about things I observed in my reality. But I think now is a good time to talk about higher consciousness and what is certainly people always think what is the nature of consciousness. But when you find that you're able to meditate and find silence within your own being, that's when you can come upon the nature of understanding more of our reality of what we're in and reflecting back. And I have a lot of, I should say, pushback from my Christian friends, and I do consider myself a Christian as well, that they're saying that the only way you're supposed to meditate is only to meditate upon the Word of God. I do not agree with this. Then why would God give us silence if we weren't to meditate upon it, right? So when we're meditating, we're learning how to actually use our minds instead of our minds being using us. So I think that's important for everyone to to understand that you are more than just your thoughts. You're more than that. And I think that with, I use these words, with our higher dimensional, newer consciousness, we could see beyond the illusion of certain things within our reality. That's what we've been perceiving, and what I've talked about a little bit before is how you're able to see something, and the data doesn't jive with your memory, and how it seems to be that one thing seems to, for other people, if it's changed, and some people see it's a new way, but you still perceive it the way you did before, but yet it's changed. So what I'm stating the fact is that the world we live in seems to now be changing, but we were able to see these changes, and these changes are our understanding that everything's like an illusion. So within the illusion, reality is what we are more in line with what's real, because we're separation. So the separation is what helps us to be more highly evolved, because when you're a fish and you're swimming in the ocean, you don't know you're in the ocean. But when you're an awakened fish and now you're swimming, then you say, oh, what is this around me? What is this water? So we are more becoming fish that know we're swimming in the water, where before we were fish that didn't know. So I liken it to the Ohm signal symbol, that there's three layers to it, and then there's another layer of enlightenment. So we have it looks like a number three. And what I came across was very strange. I was looking at the symbol for Ohm, and it seemed to be, in a lot of the pictures I was looking at, seemed to look like it said 3D. So that was very strange. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a vision I had years ago about my perceiving of reality in a way, and then I'm going to tell you about a dream I had this morning. And if somebody wants to speak with me, I'll answer questions. So, a vision. When I say a vision, it wasn't a true vision. It's just my idea of how to explain how it seems to be that we're in a. So imagine like water and the air above the water and would be the ether would be like the astral plane, and where our dreams and hopes can be and your thoughts, and that would be like the clouds, and the angels could be like the stars in the sky, and the sun would be, God, and then the water, the surface of the water would be like the now, and that would be us being in the moment, and then the ripples would be, the different thought patterns, and then underneath the water would be more subconscious, and that would be the deeper aspects of our being, and then you would have the underneath the water into the deep, and that would go to the bottom of the ocean. And those ideas would give me an idea of a representation of how I would put myself in certain aspects of it and understand that, okay, I'm being more in the clouds today, I'm being more into the surface of the water, or I'm being into the deep water. And then reading the Bible a lot, I felt identified with something called the plummet stone. So plummet stone is a stone of righteousness that would be from God, and he would tie a string of truth to the plummet stone and would be thrown into the water. And mariners would use a plummet stone to plummet the depths and be able to determine how deep the water was so their ships wouldn't hit rocks. And if you research the Bible and what it refers to a plummet stone, it's pretty deep, literally and figuratively. Um, so I just thought I'd share that with you. And then I had a dream this morning, and in my dream, I was in one reality and I was pulled out of it, and I ended up being in another reality. And in the second reality, I was more of a scientist. Here I am on a channel called The Spiritual Scientist, right? So I was a scientist in that new reality, and I stretched from my old reality, and in the new reality, I was in like it was almost like a prison, and I was in a flat plane, and I was reflecting upon how come rainbows are are bent in U shapes and not straight across if we're on a it just if we're not in a on a flat Earth. What does that mean? And I woke up, so that was something I thought was pretty interesting. How about and then I came across a video today again talking about the old Earth and the new Earth, and journeying from maybe a different vibrational frequency, and that's what made us pull away from one Earth to another Earth. And we were talking about this, years ago, before all this kind of occurred, of all these kind of effects about different realities and different things that you would perceive. But who could have predicted really that we would be talking about these kind of things in the future? But reflecting back on different enlightened teachers and masters of the past, they would always point towards about Maya illusion and the higher consciousness. Within the higher consciousness, you would perceive more of how things seem to be all of impermanence and not reality, but yet a shadow of reality. And that seems to be the case for a lot of people. And I tend to view this as a good thing, that, we shouldn't be so attached. So non-attachment is an important aspect of enlightenment and higher consciousness. So when you're more detached, then you could act more correctly, because, like I always say, when you're on a yoga mat, it's easy to be enlightened, but when you're walking around and somebody throws a rock at your head, it's harder to be enlightened at that point. So when we find that we're more detached, then you could act how in a right way, because you would have the ability to think around, your thoughts would have space, and then you could say, okay, this is how, instead of that knee-jerk reaction or that chemical reaction in your brain, or whatever, that you're reflecting and you're just acting, and then you're not actually being all who you are at the time. You're just a knee-jerk reaction. So you're a set piece in the drama that's unfolding around you. Instead, you could be, because we're an self. So to me, that is very important, being your authentic self. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of your life, you look back and you say, was I just an actor? Was I acting? Did I out in this? Was in a relationship that I wanted to break up with this person, but I felt this way and then I stayed with them? Or did I give in too easily? Did I do this or did I do that? What is it that you're trying to do with your life, and what's preventing you from doing it right now? What is it? Is it because you don't feel confident? Is it because you're feeling anxious? What is anxiety? So we give into these anxieties and we worry about things, but the worrying doesn't help. It doesn't move us forward. It's limiting your thoughts, and when you are able to free yourself from more of illusions, then you can free yourself from these anxieties. And I think it's important also to understand that, Jesus is real, and his power is real. He's a real aspect of the Trinity. He really is real. And you know, like I have a friend who says that I shouldn't talk about Jesus because that would alienate people. I'm saying I'm only talking about the truth. And someone commented, "What am I talking about?" Well, what I'm talking about here is a deeper aspect of how you perceive reality and how you perceive your life, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in general, in relation to, you could say quantum mechanics, but what I'm talking about is more, I've been talking about before, about the Mandela effect. And if, for those of you who don't know what I'm saying about that, that means that you have a memory of something, and someone else, in the of the way it is in the world, it's different than how you remember it. And it seems like for a lot of people that they came from a different, maybe a different reality or a different multiverse or something. It seems that way. What I'm talking about is how the lesson of it, and how it helps you to be more detached from those aspects. So I think, like I've been saying before, it's more of a spiritual thing that has happened. It's more of a spiritual aspect, and it's helps to detach you from what you perceived before as solid to impermanence, and the impermanence helps you to have that space, like meditation. So we're having a higher consciousness state, and that higher consciousness state allows you to make change. And that change, some people use the word manifestation, but that change is because you are able to perceive these things. So it's a higher state of consciousness. So you can't blame people for not perceiving the changes because they just haven't, when the frequency rose for, we say the planet, but when the frequency rose everywhere, that they just are still at the other frequency. And what I understand is that this shift seems to be, for a lot of people, it's shifted, and that separation has separated out a lot of people. And it's like at the, what they say in biblically, at the end times. So there's the sheep and the wolves, and but they use that allegory a lot, and they say that there's a separation. So there's that separation, and we also see a separation between what some people call NPCs and other people call, people who are asleep and people who are more awake. So we're seeing that displayed, and a lot of people are making big decisions in their lives now using this newer, higher consciousness to make these kind of decisions for them, where before they would have acted differently. Um, so everything's important, and we're seeing a lot of these things, up front and impersonal. So there's a lot of interesting things that have been happening about it. I'm talking now about the deeper aspects of higher consciousness. So for people that don't understand, I understand that you don't understand, but it's becoming more who you are, and finding the separation, um, and piercing the illusion that helps for you to understand that a lot of everything is BS, and then you're separated from it, and the separation itself leads to a higher awareness of your thinking, because now you have this separation. Before, you were integrated in it, and that was it, and then you were in the midst of it, and you didn't know. But now we have a separation, so in that separation is better. It's like in the Matrix movie when Neo takes the red pill, and he has a separation. He has a separation and awakeness that he didn't have before. in that scene, if you've watched the movie, he has an effect with a mirror. And in the mirror aspect, that he ends up perceiving himself, but then he reflects back and forth. And within the reflection of him looking in the mirror back and forth, he loses his identity of self. And they say he's fast replicating the movie, but he loses the identity of self, and then he's able to move forward. For a lot of people, losing the identity of self at a younger age is detrimental mentally. You have to have a mature mind to be able to separate from your ego and from your sense of self. Um, you know, and a lot of people misinterpret the separation of self because they don't understand it. They view it as negative because you know it, there's so much misuse of it. For someone who's not ready, being pushed to that, you can create things like a borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia and whatnot. So I always advocate, doing things correctly. And that's why I talk about, meditation and doing things calmly and taking it very slowly and all those kind of things. So you you learn, to not just, and then, learning how to separate yourself from sin. That to me is, important. But what I'm talking about basically is a higher state of consciousness. So I see some people signed on and signed off. I guess I seem pretty boring. Um, but to me, I thought it was important to talk about the lessons of these kind of effects that has happened and how we now have the ability, more people with the awareness that I'm talking about is to make the right decisions and not the wrong decisions when they come into your life. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be doing been planning on doing something on Patreon and having my own channel under my name. I changed it yet again to the spiritual scientist to Victor Hamsa, so Hamsa. So I'm going to have that on the Patreon channel. So that should be interesting. So I'm going to get more, I believe, more spiritual on there. Go into some more deeper subjects, and it should be really fun on the Patreon channel. I'm still going to do videos on YouTube. It's basically kind of connected. And then we're going to have different levels within the Patreon channel. I think it's going to be, not that I wasn't authentic before, but to take a minute and just talk about, higher consciousness. And what I'm saying is, in a higher consciousness, in the aspect of being your higher self, and that phrase has been used so much that people lose focus on it. But higher self, what does that mean? It means being like in this moment. If you were driving your car, I always say, and someone cut you off, the knee-jerk reaction is to honk the horn or yell at them or give them the finger or what have you. But to take yourself and separate yourself out from that in a minute and look at yourself as if you were almost the third party and watch yourself in that instant. And how would you act if you were controlling that avatar, how would you really act if you were trying to be in line with being an enlightened being, and you wouldn't do those things, you would do something else, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's the whole, for 25 minutes, what I've been saying. Um, and some people say to me, um, once in a while, that I seem to, I used to, they said, all the time spoke in parables, and they just didn't understand what I was saying at all. So I apologize. What I think sometimes is pretty straightforward, they say it sounds like all like riddles. So I'm trying to be as straightforward as possible in this conversation, although I tend to use similes like I did with at the beginning, when I said that there's the atmosphere and the sky and the clouds, and the birds can be, thoughts, and then we have the surface of water, and the deeper water would be our subconsciousness. That's the same way as the om symbol. So, well, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this helped a little bit for somebody somewhere. Talk a little bit about higher consciousness, and when you think clearly and you're able to separate out the ego from the rest of it, and then see through Maya, the illusion, then your consciousness is very high, and you'll find that your thoughts actually work quicker, um, and you're not mired down. So it's like, I used to teach a class, and I would say that you're like, imagine your brain's which it was, is a holistic, it's a holistic computer, right? Let's talk about it like that. So I'm just going to use the circle. I'm not making any symbol here. I'm just using a circle. Draw a circle, right? So if we tell a lie, now you take part of that circle, because you have to. Your brain's actually always thinking about the lie in relation to reality, and trying to paint the picture to frame it to somebody else, right? If you're speaking with them. So now you you have to cordon off that part of your reality to talk about the rest of it. And let's say you told another lie. So now you made that pie, you took out a bigger piece of that pie. So now you're talking about smaller things. So your brain's working harder to say less things. So when we're being more of who we are, when we're telling the truth all the time, then we're learning to use more of, not more of our brain, but more in unison versus pieces of it. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share. I'm Victor Hamsa. I have a new channel again on Patreon. And hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of these when they come on. To all my friends who follow me, I do have quite a large following, believe it or not, around the world. But a lot of people tune into these things later on. But thank you so much for all your help, and and thanks for letting me help you. And I always enjoy interacting with everybody, and you can gain to know you a little bit and get into your lives, and hopefully we're helping each other. Um, so there's some good things I'd like to do, in the future. One of the things is eventually starting an ashram, which would be a learning center. And when we get to Patreon, and I'll put some rewards out there if people want to contribute to it. One of my goals down the road would be a meditation and a healing center for people to go to, and I think that would be really, really cool. But that's one of my goals, and I'm going to need everybody's help. And I think it'd be great. I think it would be something where other people could come and other teachers and, just do that and people meditate and everything. But thank you so much, Lex.